And welcome back to the Financially Simple Experience. So friends, we're on our journey. We're on our journey to try to achieve the 8-figure exit. It is possible for you as a business owner to achieve an 8-figure exit. And through our series, we're specifically honing in on the financial industry. And as I've mentioned in the past episodes, just because you're not actively engaged or own a business within the financial industry doesn't mean that you can't apply the content to your own practice or to your own business. Today, I want to deal with this topic of, is culture preventing your 8-figure exit? You see, it is possible to make your company, your RIA, more profitable through company culture. There's this misunderstanding, and especially in the financial world, there's this misunderstanding that in order for us to drive profitability, we can only achieve such by cutting cost. And that's just not simply true. Now, we do have to be efficient. We do have to be good stewards of the resources, the money that we have within our company. But profitability is far greater driven through not only cost cutting, but through other mechanisms, i.e. company culture. You know, we've been talking about planning, and now we reached the point to where we're ready to embark on our 8-figure exit, but now we have to have solid leadership. Leadership is going to be paramount at this point. Maybe you've analyzed things like your financial report. Maybe you've looked at your operating efficiencies. Maybe you looked at your team members. Specifically, are they poised for growth? Are they in the right positions? Ultimately, culture comes into play. So let's define our terms. What do we mean when we say culture? Perhaps Investopedia.com's definition is probably the most succinct that I found. And it says, quote, the belief and behaviors that determine how your company's employees and management interact and handle business transactions. How do we as a collective company interact? And how do we handle the day-to-day business transactions we need to go about? I found an interesting quote from Greg Friedman. He's the founder of Private Ocean Wealth Management. He actually authored a book called Integrating Cultures in a Successful RIA Mergers and Acquisitions. He has this very interesting statement, which we were able to extract out of the book, which he says, quote, people need to feel good and have an environment that supports their ability to do their best work every day. They feel good when they are respected, appreciated, acknowledged, heard, and can be themselves. People need to feel good. They need to feel like they're a part of something. How many times have we watched some sports team? Doesn't really matter the sport, but we watch some sports team and they just aren't working as a cohesive unit. And therefore there's infighting. You see frustration. On the opposite side, when the sports team is working as a cohesive unit, every player is playing their designated position and they respect and understand that the people beside them or within the same team is working on their respective position, then it doesn't have that infighting. In fact, that team often wins championships. There was an interesting study conducted by Advisor Hub and Edward Jones back in 2021, and they were looking at culture. And what they determined in the financial space is that advisors at wirehouses, compared to those in the independent channel, they were far more likely to think their companies didn't value them. And there was things that were important to them individually, such as consistent and transparent compensation, serving the client's need regardless of the firm's products or position, and even flexible time. Do they have time to move and do what they need to do? And what they found is those individuals, those employees, those advisors that were in arduous systems were far less happy than those who were maybe in a little bit more open architectural systems. So let me ask you the question. What is your current firm's culture? You see, your current firm's culture is determined by your employees, but is informed by your leadership. I go back to the famous quote that John Maxwell coined, that is, everything rises and falls on leadership. Everything. There was a study that was done by Great Place to Work Institute, and they do an annual survey with over 103 million employees. And they had this quote, which I read through it 3 or 4 different times, but I think it's important for us as business owners to hear. Now, I'm going to disagree with several things in this quote, but I want you to hear the mindset of Great Places to Work Institute on what these employees of this 1.3 million employees stated. Here's what they state, quote, Employees tell us whether leaders are accessible, communicate honestly and clearly, and if their actions match their words. They tell us whether they feel respected as individuals and if they receive training, benefits, appreciation, support for their well-being, and opportunities to contribute. They tell us whether they believe their company is fair related to pay, profits, promotions, recognition, favoritism, and opportunities. They tell us if they're proud of their work, their team, their company, and if they feel like they make a difference, and if their work is meaningful. And they tell us whether they enjoy the people they work with, feel cared for, and can be themselves. Now, whenever I hear that, I get it. Employees talk a lot. Trust us. We all know as business owners, they talk a lot. Now, whenever I read that, where my brain was splitting is on the business owner side, I hear what they're saying, but I'm going, well, did they just get constructive criticism for not doing a job properly? Go back to your school days. Perhaps you had that one teacher that just was a pain. They were hardcore. And now years removed, you look back and you're like, man, I had deep respect for that particular teacher. They pushed me. They pushed me far greater than anybody else ever did. They were hard. Maybe it was a coach. And at that time, in your ignorance as an adolescent, you probably wouldn't have given them grave reviews in the moment. But yet they knew what they were doing. So as a business owner, when I hear things that employees tell us whether leaders are accessible, communicate honestly and clearly, and their actions match their words, and I hear things like that, well, yeah, they do, but what's the context? So that's one avenue of that. But the reality is that perception is reality. Managing people is hard. Managing people is hard, and driving a culture that we desire, and more importantly, that the buyer of our company desires, is even harder. So let me ask you this question. What type of culture would the buyer want within your company? And let's compare that to where you are right now. And then let's compare that to what do you want individually. You see, if we're trying to have an 8-figure exit, we've got to bring a culture for the ultimate buyer. That is the person who's going to one day acquire us and pay us the 8 figures. Now that could be in conflict to where we desire the culture today. I often see this, especially in lifestyle businesses. The proprietor, the owner will want a particular culture that is, they're not very involved. They're, they don't want to rock the boat too much. They're really not driving in on efficiency or profitability. Now on the opposite side, the buyer of that type of business wants to know, hey, are your margins in place? Are the KPIs where they need to be in accordance with industry standards? So let me ask it again. What type of culture does the buyer want? There's a study that's often done by Fortune, and it's the 100 best companies to work for, and it's a list. And what they illustrated is those companies who reach the top 100 in this list outperformed the market by a factor of 3.36%. They perform better than those who did not make the list because culture drives profitability. Culture drives profitability. See, there's a strength that's found in this particular list. When asked if, quote, management genuinely seeks and responds to ideas, 82% of employees responded that this was always or most often the case. It's very interesting. Now, when we step back into our particular businesses, we realize that culture can impact our specific RA today. Obviously, we want to drive our business to where we have the 8-figure exit. We want that. But our culture impacts us today in the heat of the moment. See, the culture of your company enhances the client experience. If you're a business that is innovative and you're using new technology, then clients are going to see that. However, if you're outdated, then clients are also going to see that. So your culture enhances your client experience. Your culture provides detailed analytics and insights. If your company is plugged in with where they're going, if your employees are plugged in with where they're going and they have a crystal clear destination in mind, then they are going to be providing information to help make more informed decisions, better decisions that can help you with your investment choices. Investment choices being how you're going to invest the dollars within your company, how you're going to allocate the dollars within your company. By having your team, the culture moving in the direction toward the 8-figure exit, you're provided with greater insight. You also mitigate risk. If you have a firm that's renegade, as one person says, buck wild, if you just have this firm that's just renegade, then you have great compliance risk. And oftentimes the compliance department will lock it down and make the firm highly unprofitable. However, if you have this culture of compliance, hey, we're going to do the right thing within the parameters, we're going to do the best we can to follow the rules, then you end up with more efficiency in business. And finally, by having the proper culture, you end up with greater retention and engagement. How expensive is it for us as business owners to replace employees? It's a pain. It's a pain. It's almost like you dance with the devil you know or the one you don't know, right? The old saying. Many, many times I have made decisions within the business that were not wise because I didn't want to deal with the hard outcomes. I didn't want to grab the bull by the horns and deal with the problem at that moment. And because of such, employee retention ended up moving in the opposite direction. SHRM, the Society for Human Resource Management, has identified a few things that employee recognition impacts and has a profound impact on the following: increased motivation, enhanced engagement, increased collaboration, and talent retention. In fact, one study done by Aon Hewitt found that the turnover was reduced by 31% at companies with a strong culture of employee appreciation compared to businesses with weaker recognition programs. So we know we need to focus on culture. We got that. Let's take the second step. How do we determine what our company culture is? See, a toxic work environment can lead to low productivity, high turnover, high level of absenteeism. It can lead to poor reputation. And frankly, it can steal all the joy out of business. No one wants to work in an environment that is constantly on edge or that has lack of respect or that just candidly just can't get along. That is, man, it's painful. We've all been there. We don't want that. We don't want it for our business. And candidly, we're not going to reach our 8-figure exit that we desire whenever we have that sort of a company. Okay, Justin, so I know where I'm at. I have a good sense of where I'm at within my culture, my business. How do I improve it? How do I improve my current company's culture to help me achieve the 8-figure exit? First is trust. Trust. Now, President Reagan said, trust but verified. And there's some truth to that. But trust. If you hire somebody to do a specific job, lay out the job that you need them to do, hold them accountable, and trust that they can do it. And when they're missed the mark, for whatever reason, sometimes people miss the mark not because of their own abilities, but because they're not resourced properly, or because of life, because of circumstances, because of the economic cycle, whatever it is, let's be respectful through our trust. The Fisher College of Business at Ohio State University states, and I quote, "We know that trust leads to greater intimacy, stronger relationships, and a healthier company culture. Trust and psychological safety enables people to take risk, lean to changes, and perform at their best. Trust can build confidence in each other and in the organization." So how do we build trust? Well, number one, we follow through with our commitments. If you say you're going to do something, do it. It's not hard. I was raised on a country farm to say, hey, son, your word means something. If you say you're going to do it, come hell or high water, do it. Another one is you can communicate appropriately. Know when to share information openly, as well as when to display discretion. Now, that's a learned art. If anybody's the weakest at this, it is me. It is me, because I think people think like I do. And so when I speak, honestly, sometimes I don't take into consideration their frame of mind, their way they're going to interpret it. And I've often done more harm than good by trying to communicate. Communication is so hard, and it's learned. I could tell you that I communicate better today than I did 10 years ago. I'm sure you can say the same. But if we're going to build trust, we have to communicate appropriately. And then when we don't, we own it. Hey, I'm sorry. That's not what I was trying to say. let me see if I can clarify this. I'm sorry. I know that came out. Now, we all understand the old adage, like toothpaste out of a tube, whenever you squeeze it, you can't get it back in. It's hard. But we can communicate appropriately, and then we can be respectful. You know, the old golden rule says, treat others as you want to be treated. If you want respect, you must also show respect. You got to listen for ideas from your team and handle conflicts in a healthy and productive manner. Conflicts are going to occur. You don't handle it by sticking your head in the sand. You address the root problem, not the symptoms. Not the symptoms, the problems. Another way that you can improve your company's culture is through employee autonomy and empowerment. Employee autonomy and empowerment. In my own company, I find it hard. I find it so hard to trust people. How many times has we as business owners been burned? I'm sure your mind's going back to a particular circumstance. Man, I could share many times when I trusted somebody to do something and it just wasn't a priority, or they just didn't do what they said they were going to do, or the decision they made was very poor, very poor. If you're going to build culture within your business, you're going to have autonomy, and you're going to have to empower people. One of the dangers with empowerment is as you empower people and then you begin to critique them, people often feel micromanaged. Now, the way we deal with that is, again, addressing the issue. Where are we at? Where are we going? How is this helping us sit there? Have you considered some of the alternatives? But we have to empower people. And finally, you have to provide a professional development and growth plan. Another one that Sherm pointed out was managers have exposure to training opportunities and career progression conversations than non-managers. See, as a business owner, you're going to have more opportunities to talk about how you can train people to where they want to be. You see, creating an environment that provides growth opportunities is imperative. And then we collaborate on successes and we learn from our mistakes. If anybody has made a mistake, it is me. In fact, I posted something online the other day that says, just because I give advice doesn't mean I know more. It means I've made a lot more mistakes perhaps than others, which is the story of my life. Story of my life. I have made every mistake you can think of within business. And because of that, I have this framework of what not to do. Oftentimes it's easy to say what not to do as it is to say what to do. There was a survey done by the American Psychological Association, or the APA as they call it, and they said, and I quote, most respondents said that their companies did operate some kind of recognition scheme. However, more than a third of the people surveyed had received no recognition in the previous year. Less than half said that recognition was provided fairly, and only half said they felt valued by their employer. That's sad. That's sad. When's the last time you told somebody, hey, good job. This is impressive. Great work. Every single time we have the opportunity to speak life into somebody. David Stewart, leader of the O.C. Tanner Institute, conducted a survey with 3,500 employees from startups to Fortune 100 companies. And he said 7 out of 10 employees who report they've received some form of appreciation from their supervisors said they're happy with their jobs. Without that recognition, just 39% said they're satisfied. You see, we like to feel good. We like to feel good about what we do day in, day out. There was a statement by Deborah Bryan, who was a psychologist, and I thought this was a powerful statement, and we'll end on this. And she said, when we celebrate our successes, no matter how small, endorphins are released. These help us not only to feel good, but it also reinforces the behaviors so that we will get more of this feel-good feeling again. On the other hand, if you don't celebrate, you're training your brain to see those things as not important. Our brain begins to see them in unexpected or even mundane. See, friends, we've got to help our team. So let me ask you, when you look at your company today, how is it positioned? Do you have a team that's a cohesive unit that feels valued, that knows where you're headed, that when times get tough, they dig in or they lean into the wind? Or do you have the opposite? Do you have infighting? Do you have toxicity? Do you have somebody that's just constantly critical? Friends, if we're going to have the 8-figure exit, obviously we've got to deal with profitability, but profitability can be enhanced through company culture. Hope this helps you. Hey, look, you say, Justin, I need some help, man. Reach out to us. We have a team of advisors, business planners who can help you, who can drive your company far greater than where it is today. A good coach, man, they can help you so greatly. Till next time, friends, I realize life is hard. It is, and life is frustrating, but it is good. Live a blessed life. Y'all go out and make it a great day.